we expecting too much too soon from our youngest children? What does school readiness really mean? And why is play the most natural form of learning being squeezed out of our classrooms? Today, I'm joined by Ruth Lue-Quee, a highly qualified education consultant and award-winning former Deputy Headteacher. Ruth brings extensive experience in both mainstream and special educational needs, with particular focus on early years and Key Stage 1. Ruth believes that everyone should play more and is dedicated to empowering parents, caregivers and professionals to engage and educate children through playful, enjoyable and developmentally appreciated learning experiences. A respected voice in her field, Ruth regularly shares her expertise with businesses, media outlets and education platforms on topics related to play, early learning and inclusion. She's frequently featured and interviewed by major national media outlets, including the BBC, The Times and The Telegraph. In this episode, we talked about why play is not a luxury but a necessity. Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary's comments on 4-year-olds not being ready to learn, and how Ruth's petition to protect play-based learning has already hit over 50,000 signatures in 5 days. Welcome to the podcast, Ruth. Ruth, welcome to the podcast. It's so lovely to have you on Let's Talk Neurodivergent Kids. I wondered, could you start just telling our listeners a little bit about you and MMT Play?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here today, Izzy. It is so lovely to be able to come and speak to you and all of your listeners as well. So my name is Ruth Lee-Quee. I'm an educational consultant, former Deputy Headteacher and founder of MMT Play. And I'm on a mission to make learning through play active, engaging and developmentally appropriate for all of our children.
So are you a mum yourself, Ruth?
I am. I'm a mum of 2. I've got a little boy who's 5. He started school this year, so we're coming to the end of our first year in school as a parent, which has been a journey. I can remember this time last year, the nerves, the anxiety, am I doing the right thing around all of that? And I've got a little girl who's just turned 2. Having a boy and a girl as well. They're both incredibly different, but absolutely my world and the inspiration behind my online name, My Mummy Teacher, as well, because I was my children's teachers and their parent as well, which I think a lot of us find ourselves trying to juggle the two because it's actually very hard to do both.
Yes,
as well.
It is indeed. We're all trying to juggle a lot of the time. Just going back into your sort of education history and where you started as a teacher and how that built up to being a deputy head.
So well, my mum was a teacher. My dad was a university lecturer. My grandma was a head teacher. So I'm one of those people that I think teaching was in the blood for me. I didn't really ever know what else I would do. Well, I used to say I'd either be an estate agent as a teacher or run my own business. I've ticked 2 of them off, so maybe one day I'll have an estate agents as well. But I was that child that I loved, getting all my teddies out, getting my dolls out, playing teachers. I can remember asking for a whiteboard for my birthday when I was 7, and that was honestly the best present I ever had. My poor brothers used to get roped in. I was the teacher. And so I never really wanted to do anything else. That's what I was going to do. I did a BEd, so I didn't go to university and study a different subject and then train to be a teacher. I literally went in to be a teacher. And I remember at the time my mum saying to me, if you do this, then there's not really many avenues you can go into. You're putting all your eggs into one basket. But that was very much me and absolutely loved being a teacher. Once I sort of qualified and had positions myself, I taught in 3 schools in 3 separate authorities and differing types of schools. So I taught in one school that was quite affluent. The other 2 were in very socio-economic deprived schools with high percentages of pupil premium children, English as an additional language, SEN. And I absolutely loved my job. The only reason that I stopped doing my job and came out the classroom was I'd worked my way up. I became a deputy head teacher at the age of 27, and I then had my little boy when I was 28, and I wanted to go back part-time. And at the time then, it was you could come back part-time, but you'd have to just do class teacher. If you want to come back to the role that you're at, then you have to come back full-time only. I was always teaching. I was never a non-teaching deputy. And I just sort of felt like, well, I've worked so hard to get to this point, and my passion is to help others and inspire others to teach the way we know is right, to be able to make that difference to children. And it didn't feel right for me to sort of, I say this in like inverted commas, drop back down, and so that's why I left. Wasn't quite sure what I would do, but here we are 5 years later, and now I go into, hundreds of different schools across the UK. I've spoken abroad internationally. We have that impact online, and now I'm just hoping to do whatever I can to really empower adults, us as parents, as teachers, as educators, to really meet our children where they're at, and help them flourish the way we know is best.
What a huge achievement and you're still really young. So I just think, and also like your parents and the kind of your family tree of teachers must be so proud of what you've now achieved, because actually through MMT Play, you're giving that gift to so many families. And as you say, not just in the UK, but internationally as well, which is just such a huge achievement, Ruth. When you were teaching in schools, what age group, what years were you involved with?
So as deputy head, it was a primary school. So we had from nursery, so we had our 3-year-olds all the way up to 11-year-olds. My sort of specialism and expertise was early years and key stage 1. So how we teach in early years, I personally believe, is amazing. I think we have that absolutely right. Our children can move, they can play, they can communicate, they can do things as they choose. And when I was teaching, I very much modelled that into Key Stage 1 and saw how that really, really helped children to thrive and met them where they were at. And unfortunately, as it currently stands, that isn't how it is for many children. I put a post on Instagram the other day, and I used the word criminal. I said, can we talk about how criminal the jump is from early years to Key Stage 1 in most settings? And, it appealed to so many people because I don't think they ever take that moment to reflect on, actually, this is a huge jump for our children. And some of our children have just turned 6, like literally the day before, and they're suddenly going into a year 1 classroom, which can be so, so different. So that's where a lot of my background is. But like I say, I go into schools now. I support in an inclusion consultant role as well with a lot of children with special educational needs, and that can be again from early years right through to secondary. But my special place is early years and Key Stage 1.
And for the listeners, your special educational needs sort of background has been through your experiences within the primary schools that you've worked in initially. So you saw firsthand these children in school settings and perhaps some of the brilliance and the challenges that we're faced, obviously trying to manage SEM within school settings.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the schools where I worked at, we had an alternative resource provision base on there as well for children with autism. So although we were a mainstream school, we had a lot of children that came to us for that specialist support. And I love what you've just said there. It really makes me smile when, of course there are challenges, but actually there are so many magical, special, thinking out of the box, glorious, fantastic moments that we have when we are supporting our children with additional needs as well.
And just for clarification, can you just explain what an education consultant is and what you do?
Absolutely. So I do a few different roles within this. So the one thing that I do is I'll go into schools and I will support teachers and advise them on how best they can either get play and continuous provision into their settings and into their school, because that's what I wholeheartedly believe that we need. But also I look at children who've got additional needs, and I provide reports or specialist targets and provision ideas that teachers can put in place to meet their needs in the environment that we find ourselves in schools. I also work with brands, so corporate brands and sort of, yeah, like that corporate world that I've never been in until leaving the classroom. And a lot of them want to either like appeal to teachers, schools, or parents, but also the workshops and training that they're developing, they quite often want to do it in a way that will be engaging, that will be playful, that aligns to the curriculum as best as it possibly can. So I'll consult on those sorts of things as well. So I work both in schools on that level to support teachers, but I also work with businesses who want to, instill more playful learning and have that insight from someone who gets it as well.
Thank you, Ruth. I think it's really important that we just really understand your breadth of knowledge, the fact that you have been in the classroom, you have worked outside of the classroom, you are in this, consulting. Before we dive into something that was released last week, which has upset many people, by Bridget Phillipson, the Secretary of State for Education. And I just want to read this out so that we can just start to slowly have a conversation about it, because I know for me personally, initially I felt very, very angry and frustrated, and then I felt very sad. I felt a little bit like there was parent shaming that was going on. I felt it was a very misplaced, judged set of words. So I'm just going to read them out. And also, I just want to say at this point, I have never entered into the realms of bringing up political statements. And I'm not somebody that, wants to even pretend to be extremely, knowledgeable or all the rest of it. But I just felt that it just felt so innately wrong, especially as a parent with a neurodivergent child. I felt I couldn't just not say anything. So this is what was said by Bridget Phillipson. Many children are arriving for the first day in schools simply not ready to learn. A quarter not fully toilet trained. A third can't follow instructions. Half can't sit still. It holds those children back, of course, but it holds the whole class back as well. The earliest years of their lives, they are some of the most important. Excellent early years education leads to academic success later on. And she carries on. But I just want to spend some time working and digesting our way through what has actually been said. So the first implication of 4-year-olds arriving to school not ready to learn, what do you take from that?
So when I felt exactly the same as you, when I saw that, I woke up and I just felt like I've never heard something so infuriating. It's not as simple as that. Like, children, by the nature of being a child in childhood, they want to learn. Like, I have never ever met a child that doesn't want to learn. If there's a problem with children learning, then to me, that problem is not the child. The problem is the environment around the child. The problem is the support or the lack of support we're providing to that child. The problem is what we're expecting that child to do. The problem is not that that child isn't ready to learn. The problem is that the school or the expectation from the government is not what they want that child to do. And I think, yes, there is a lot of things that we can do as parents to support our children and encourage our children and give them the best start in life. But again, I genuinely believe most parents, and it is most parents, it doesn't matter what your background is, most parents want their child to do well. They want their child to do well. There may be certain barriers that mean it is a lot more difficult for some parents to be able to support their children, but that doesn't mean they don't want their child to learn, and it doesn't mean they don't want their child to come to school ready to learn. So I think there's a lot to unpick. As a teacher, teachers will say, some teachers would say, they're not coming to school ready to learn. But what does that mean? Because it depends what you're judging ready to learn as. So to me, if children are coming into my classroom, I want them to feel happy. I want them to feel secure. I want them to feel safe. I want them to feel like they can regulate their bodies, they can regulate their minds. They know they feel welcome, their families feel welcome. They can see themselves in the environment on the displays. I don't mean themselves personally, but I mean represented, so that they feel like they're coming into a place where they can then learn. The rest of those things, as a teacher, we can take and we can nurture and we can push them on. And I know she's saying that, perhaps parenting hasn't done what parents' jobs should be. But actually, there's a wide range of reasons why a child might not be in that position on the first day of school to tick a box and a standard. It doesn't mean they're not ready to learn. They are ready to learn if you meet them where they're at and take them on their unique journey.
And I totally agree that when a child starts, I've got 3 children, and I've been through that first, settling into a new environment. Feeling safe is the most important foundation to any education. If you feel safe, you'll feel more ready to learn. If you don't feel safe, then your nervous system is completely it's completely unhappy. You're not releasing all the right hormones that are going to enable you to learn. You're going to have lots of cortisol, you're going to have lots of adrenaline, and none of the kind of good stuff that you need in order to learn. And so being safe is, as I say, like the foundation. Also, it's the first time that children are away from the person that helps regulate their emotions, because at that age, they're not able to regulate their emotions. And that's really frightening, and especially for our neurodivergent kids who have difficulty with dysregulation anyway. Surely we should be making parents feel safe, that our children are going into an environment where they are not being judged, parents are not being judged. They are just starting at the foundation of the pure core of just being safe and emotionally regulated. For me, I think that is far more important to make parents feel positive and happy with the setting that they're going into.
I think it depends very much on what your idea of learning is. So they're not coming in ready to learn. Well, learning is it is absolutely a journey, and it is so unique to that individual, and we have to meet them where their starting point is, and that starting point will be completely different. So just because that child, perhaps the next step in their learning journey might be that they need to be able to, that they need to give good attention and listening skills, for example. That might be, they're probably coming and they're ready to learn those things, but are they ready to learn how to hold a pencil and sit at a table all day? Maybe not. They might need a little bit more support on that. So it's what we're judging and what we're expecting of them. And the crucial thing is it developmentally appropriate what we actually expect of our children at that age?
No, and I think everything you're saying, it is the way something is said. And I just think it was so kind of with a blaming negative angle that didn't empower and it didn't uplift or excite us. How brilliant that our 4-year-olds, these brilliant, curious, fascinating, playful, energetic, brilliant little beings are starting in their world of education. How exciting, you know? And that's what I want to hear from the powers that be. I want to be excited for our children. And I also think it's really sad because I think a lot of the teachers, you know, the people that are actually in the classroom living this experience every single day would also, I think, probably feel quite sad about the message that was put out. Would you agree as a teacher?
100%. So my gut reaction to that was, early years reception is the one place we've got it right. Like we do have it right in early years and reception, because the staff and the teachers, they can be so responsive. We have that movement, we have that play-based philosophy. Children they have more freedom to explore in a way that suits them best. So to be told that it's the forgotten year, in terms of what? The forgotten year in terms of putting lots of tables and chairs in, the forgotten year in terms of bringing academia further down, the forgotten year in terms of, because they're introducing a new way to track and monitor data, of collecting data, because I don't think it's the forgotten year in terms of the best practice that we see. I think I've said it my whole career. I think what early years teachers and staff do is phenomenal, and that best practice is how we do meet the needs of all the children throughout the school. And if we had that, and a sort of, instead of this top-down approach, which is what she's essentially saying, we've nailed it across the secondary and primary, but we forgot reception. So now we're going to come into reception as well. No, we need a bottom-up approach. Take what's really good here and spread that through. And it is like, being a teacher is a job like no other. Like, unless it's like anything, isn't it? Until you've done it, you genuinely don't understand how. Like, as a mum, you get overstimulated, don't you, when your kids are like here and there, and one's tugging on you and the other one's here and the other one wants to be, and I don't think that ever goes away. I think that just happens all the time. Like, as a teacher, imagine that multiplied by 30.
I don't.
In the classroom.
I mean, hats off to all you amazing teachers who look after our kids daily. And yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. And I think, you know, I also think we're coming off the back of COVID and the impact that had, and also the impact on those 4-year-olds that are coming through. But, you know, I was, you know, home educating my older children, and that was just our own children. Now, I know it's harder with your own kids, but I would often think, how do teachers do this? Like, how do they do this? It is amazing. When she says about a third can't follow instructions, what instructions are we referring to there, do you think?
So this is where what I'm going to say might be a bit out there, but I'm going to say it anyway. So yes, in society, to be able to, you know, be around our children, be around other children, to get on with the children, to get on with people in the world, to follow, you know, we have instructions, we have rules in the world that we have to follow. And that's absolutely fine, as long as those rules are there for the purpose of keeping us safe, keeping us feeling happy, collaborating together, making us feel secure, and they've got a true purpose behind them. That's amazing. And of course, we have to teach our children that there are these sorts of rules in there. The difficulty comes for me is when, what's the purpose of the instruction? Now, this is particularly where I think, with sort of my SEND hat on, and when we get instructions for the sake of instructions, the instructions for the sake of compliance, instructions for the sake of, I've got 30 children in this classroom and we're all sat on the carpet right now, so everybody needs to be sat on the carpet, and you all need to have your legs crossed, and you all need to have your arms folded, and you all need to have your eyes on me. And if you're not doing that, then that's not following instructions, because that's what I've asked to do. that to me is not necessary. That's not neuroaffirming. That's not meeting every child where they're at. It's having instructions for the sake of having instructions. And I know, and you know, without fully understanding where she's coming from with that, is it that she's saying these 4-year-olds are coming into school and they're not ready to basically be told what to do, what to think, when to have a break, when they can do that. And they're sort of, I don't know, for want of a better word, they're like not complying. And so then that causes problems because we can't control them in that sense. Or is it that these children are having difficulties with understanding some boundaries, understanding that we have to respect each other, understanding that we have to, you know, follow certain rules to keep each other safe and secure? And I think we do need to teach children that we have to follow some, but to a point. And this is where, for me, I want my children to become critical thinkers. I want them to be creative. I want them to, yes, follow instructions and make sure everyone's healthy and happy, but I also want them to think for themselves. I want them to advocate for themselves. I want them to be able to move around if they need to, or get a drink when they want to if they need to, or go to the toilet when they need to. I know we spoke about toilet training a minute ago, and then you hear horror stories where parents say, oh, my child needed the toilet and they weren't allowed to go to the toilet when they asked. And that's just like so bizarre and different. Or even when we think about, like, in primary school, we're so good at saying to our children, like, if you feel hot, take your jumpers off. We're teaching you to self-regulate. And then they go to secondary school and they have to ask permission to take their blazers off, or they have to. It just doesn't make sense to me. It's like, what's the purpose of following the instruction and following the rule? Is there a purpose that's going to enable these children to flourish, be safe, thrive, and be curious, mini like children into to adults? Or is the purpose really that if everybody just does the same at the same time and it's all very nice and we can all conform, that it's easier for an adult, and it's easier for them to pass a test and to get this data? So yeah, I just think it's how you go about it as well. And there's so many more things that come into play too, like this generation now, they are growing up in a digital world. There is no denying that whatsoever. And so children's attention spans and all those sorts of things, they're very different, because years ago, like when we grew up, we all had free play. We would be able to go off, we'd do this. Even like with my own children, I noticed that they're not used to that as much, because even if we go to the park or we go here, like I'm very much like, oh, make sure I can see you, stay by me. They don't have that like freedom to play and to explore like they do, and their attention is very much spent in a digital world. So it obviously will affect things. But if that's where our children are, then we do something about that and we meet them where they're at and support them on their journey.
Yeah, because the classroom, if there is no flexibility and if everything is very rigid and you have a teacher that, I don't know, maybe wants that sort of conforming, ordered classroom, if you have a neurodivergent child in that situation, they're going to really struggle. So I know, for example, with my child, going to the loo was their way of saying, I need to move. So they worked out that if they asked to go to the loo, that meant that they had their escape. They had their chance to move, rather than, can I move? Or just have the flexibility or the freedom to move. Why not give that child a different responsibility to go off and, I don't know, hand the pencils out, or go and give them a job, go and give them something to do, empower them, lift them, play to their strengths. So I think that's why when a statement like this comes out and it said, half can't sit still, that really hurt. That really hurt, because no child is designed to sit still. As adults, we're not designed to sit still. We all want to move. That is just a human right. And so, yes, of course, is a place where you need to learn because it might be a safety reason. Perhaps they're at lunch and they need to be having their lunch, or, within the classroom for a purpose of an activity. Of course, there are appropriate moments. But if you have a child, and of which in a classroom I would imagine there is a strong percentage who can't sit still, that statement is actually going, yes, half can't sit still, because we're dealing with a neurodivergent, classroom. And if we could be more inclusive and sort of lean into everybody's differences and I don't know. I think that for me, I think that's what made me feel that's what really kind of hit a nerve.
I completely agree. For me, the sitting still was the worst thing she said. And somebody said to me in a comment, they said, I'd actually be more concerned about the 4-year-old that can sit still.
Yeah.
Like literally, 4-year-olds are not designed to sit still. If we're talking about school readiness, which is the whole big hoo-ha at the moment, and getting children ready for school, sitting still would not be one of my ultimate things that I want a child to do, because that is not how they learn best. I can tell you this from my experience. I can tell you this from the research, what the research shows us. Children need to move, so it has all the physical benefits. It's not just about keeping them healthy, getting their heart rate up. Of course, that's brilliant. But actually, it's things like their dexterity. It's things like building up the strength in their muscles to be able to then hold a pencil. And actually, that comes from doing large movements and big movements before we even get into the smaller movements. It's about how we regulate. Like, movement is a way of regulating, of feeling just right to learn. And we're all different individuals. Some of us need to move more than others. That doesn't mean that if you can't sit still perfectly, that you are not as good or at anything than that child that can. It just brings to mind all the time.
So I was going to say, or holding back the other class because you're the one, the other members in the class, because you're the one that can't sit still.
Exactly. It's that image of, everybody's a genius until you try and assess like an elephant's ability to climb a tree or a fish's ability to climb a tree. The only one that's going to succeed is the monkey. The monkey will be able to climb the tree. And that's exactly what we do. And that's exactly what is wrong. It is such a bigger notion around education and learning and what school should be about. But as adults, how do we learn best? We learn through play, we learn through movement. Even if we don't think we do, we do. If you go on a training course and somebody is sat at the front with PowerPoint slides and they just read through the PowerPoint slides and you've got to sit there and listen all day, you might be able to listen for maybe 40 minutes, and then you've probably grabbed your phone, and then you've thought, oh, when's the coffee? And then you've gone for the toilet. And I'm talking as like a neurotypical adult here. So imagine being a neurodivergent 4-year-old in a scenario that is completely different to what you've ever known before. And in reception as well, this is why I think it's really strange what we do. Reception, we get them into school, we get them used to, so you've got your free flow and you can have your child-led play and you can sort of do this and do that, you can move, you don't have to sit still. But then in year 1, that notion of what I thought school was is suddenly stripped away. So now I'm going back to school in September and I think it's going to be the same. But no, it's not. Now I've got to sit at a table and a desk for even longer. I've got to sit still for even longer. And if I can't do that physically because my body is different to what you're asking me to do, it's going to impact everything. It's going to impact my well-being. It's going to impact how I feel about myself. ultimately it's going to impact how I learn, because there's this thing called like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it talks about what we said, you know, how we need to feel safe and secure, we need to feel loved, we need to have our basic needs met before we're able to actually do any sort of academic learning. Well, for children who need to move, that's one of their needs. They have to have that done.
Yeah.
I know of adults who they've now got those like those desks where you can stand at them, like standing desks, and they go up and down, or you can get like the things that move that you put into your chair, like the little bands that you can kick. And we're allowing adults to have these things. You know, we work from home now a lot of the time. Like you can literally lie down to do your work. You don't have to you don't have to sit still. Like, who is that for? What is the purpose of that? How does it benefit the child? And I always circle round to, I will do anything if it is for that child. If it's not for that child, then why are we doing it? Because why are we doing it? Sitting still for me is not something 4-year-olds need to do to be able to be school ready. Like you said before, the things that we want to do are the things like, can you spot a ladybird on somebody's arm when you're just walking around? Like, I love how 4-year-olds have that ability to be like, "Oh, there's a ladybird." Like, they focus on the little details that we don't focus in on. If you can do that, that's amazing, because you've got curiosity. You've got that way of looking at the world that's different to me. You've got that ability to learn, and that's what we want to like home in on and really, really pull. And when I was teaching, a lot of the children that I taught, they were the children that came to school and they weren't potty trained, or they couldn't sit still, or they didn't have those attention and listening skills. Now, I could have been a very stressed out teacher trying to make them do these things that children are not designed to do, or I could teach them in the way that I knew was best. And for me, it's joy when you allow, and this sounds horrible, I'm even saying allow, but when you allow children to be children, when you allow them to move, to laugh, to talk, to communicate, to play, to follow their interests, even little simple things like in Key Stage 1 with the children who needed it, who, let's say, for example, like we're struggling with their maths. I had some children that were obviously sat at the desk, they had their maths books, they do it with pen and pencil, but developmentally, that's where they were. Then I had my other group of children who I'd make a treasure chest in the sand. They had to pick out a number, they'd run back and forth in the little outdoor area, they'd stick the number, they'd go back again, because that was where they were at and that's what they were needed. Like, sitting still is actually the hardest skill to master, because your like vestibular sense, your proprioceptive sense has to be fully developed. So if that's not even fully developed in your starting school, you're not going to be able to do it. And I don't want you to do it anyway. I don't want any 4-year-old to sit still.
No. And actually, I don't really want any child to have to sit still. And I think, you know, also you've got a cohort of kids who join in September, but their birthdays could be nearly a year apart. So developmentally, you know, the child that's the eldest in the class versus the youngest, there are big developmental differences. So there is going to be, you know, that disparity. And actually, I think, you know, when I spoke to Naomi Fisher, and exactly saying the same as you about, you know, let's not push the academics down, let's push play up for longer. Because really, what is the rush? Like, why do we need to assess? Why do we have all these exams? Like, surely, I mean, I even loved that sense of not aging, like not putting children into age groups, you know, for a certain length of time, where it just became much more free play for much longer to develop their curiosity, their creative thinking, but also their feeling of safety. Because I think for a lot of our children, especially our kids with, you know, who are neurodivergent, the impact on school that it's having on their mental health is so enormous, and it's quite frightening. And I think I just think there was such an opportunity for change, and I think there was such a cry for it, and such a kind of, there's so many stats, there's so much research, there's so many people that could advise on the way children of this age develop. And yet we've kind of gone back to the Victorian era. It's just, I can't. And even when I try to look at this objectively, and try to think, and yes, maybe there's some argument. But really, when we've talked about it now, fundamentally, when a child enters into the education system, it's the system that's got to fit them, not them needing to fit the system. Can we talk, because the reason that I wanted you on, Ruth, is because you have created this amazing petition for more play. And I really want the listeners and for us to be able to share this so that people can sign the petition. Can you tell us what it's for, what you're hoping to do, and what inspired you to do this petition?
Absolutely, of course I can. So, well, I was sat in bed in my pajamas at 11 o'clock one evening, as you do.
Yeah.
And I just felt like I just got to the point where I was like, enough is enough. Like all this, genuinely, like when Bridget Phillipson came in to power in terms of education and what she was talking about and the things that we were going to see, I had that element of hope that actually this could be the moment that we get that reform that we need. I was really excited. And the longer it's gone on, the more worried I am, the more I feel like it's exactly what we've just said, that actually we want to push things further down. They're not seeing the value in play-based learning. And when we talk about our children with additional needs as well, we say what's essential for some is beneficial for all. And that's truly what I believe. A lot of the strategies that I'll recommend for children, I'm like, actually, this would be beneficial for every single child. But play truly is one of those things. Learning through play, having a continuous provision, and how that works is you take what we do in reception in early years and you model that. So your classroom is set up in a way that you might have like a home corner, you might have a water area, you might have some dressing up clothes, a role play, you'll have construction, you'll have things for writing and to inspire writing, you might have weighing scales for maths. They're just around your classroom, your children know where they are. And then you have a small table of children that you then work with in a smaller group so you can meet them exactly where they're at, push them on. Because again, there's this notion that they need to sit and learn for 6 hours. They don't. They just need really, it's like quality over quantity, really. And then they go into the environment and they play themselves, they communicate with their friends, they do writing because they're inspired to write because it's engaged them and they want to do that. This can work throughout primary schools. I've seen this work amazingly in year 6 classrooms, but it's been stripped away. And how it currently stands in England, the early years framework recognises how important play is. It's talked about under the characteristics of learning. It is fully pushed. We talk about it, this need for it. Then our children go into Key Stage 1, which is year 1 and 2, so they're 5, 6 and 7. And suddenly in England, in most schools, that play disappears. They are taught like how our children are taught in Key Stage 2, in Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4. Now, I believe that this play-based model can run right the way through, but it would be an absolute win to get it in Key Stage 1, which incidentally in Scotland and Wales, they do have play protected within their curriculums. It's just in England that we don't have this for our children. So the petition is to make play-based learning, to make play and continuous provision statutory in the Key Stage 1 curriculum in England. And that's because I truly believe and I know this is how young children learn best. They're everything to do with the child, their enjoyment, their intrinsic motivation, their well-being, their health, their happiness, their communication skills, their childhood, that joy of going to school. And what you were saying a minute ago as well about how it feels like we've gone back to the Victorian era. I was looking at a policy document from the 70s the other day, as you do.
Yeah.
And I know, just as you do.
Was that in your pyjamas at 11 o'clock at night?
Everything I do 9 times out of 10 is in my pyjamas because it's around my kids. And it was what they were expected to do then in schools in England was what we are now sort of expecting our children to do in nursery. So, for example, now, I don't know, what we teach our children in year 2 used to be taught in year 3. What we teach them in year 1 used to be taught in year 2. In 2014, we made everything a little bit harder for our children. The world around our children has changed. Child development, that work of Dr. Mary Sheridan from the 70s, looking at these policies from the 70s, that hasn't changed. Truly, that's what our children need. We've just moved the goalposts, expected children to scientifically and biologically have changed. They haven't. Now we're saying that there's a problem and children aren't getting there. That's because what we're asking them to do isn't appropriate. How we're teaching them isn't appropriate. Teachers are burning out as a result of that. Children are facing a mental health crisis. The answer, honestly, is play. It's also changing the curriculum, but we'll just focus on
one thing at a time. And I think as well with play and everything you're saying, it's so brilliant. You thinking about, yes, there could be an area in the classroom where you can lead smaller sessions in year 1, where you would get more targeted learning, and then you would have more play areas to still even explore what it is actually you're learning at that table through interests and what they want to learn about. Because I know for my children, it's all, if they are interested in something, then they can focus and they really, really thrive. If it's something they're not interested in. For people that, please go and sign the petition. It will be in our show notes, Ruth. Is there anything else you want to say about the petition? Anything else where they can find out more?
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me on here. And I just hope that it's empowered others to sort of question and think, do you know what, there is a better way for all our children that can truly help all of our children to thrive. The petition as it stands, I think we're on about 54,000 in 5 days.
Amazing.
Which that blows my mind. That's genuinely amazing. And that is the true power of a collective of teachers who are doing their best in a broken system. That's how I felt. It was very much my head and my heart. My head was saying one thing, like, this is my job, I have to do it, I'm here, I'm doing the best for the kids. And my heart was saying, but this isn't how I think children should learn. And that is incredibly difficult. And a collective of parents and professionals and educators and amazing, wonderful people like you that are giving us a voice to say, actually, we want better for our children. So we need to try and reach 100,000, because then hopefully it will be there for a parliamentary debate. And wouldn't that just be wonderful to get those things out into the open and have these conversations. And the people that can make the change, it would just be wonderful if the changes were child-centred as opposed to data-centred.
And how great, Ruth, that this petition, and this is why I was so keen to get you on this week, is available now following that statement that came out, or that video that came out, because there is something we can actually do to try and get our voices heard for our brilliant little brains and brilliant little people. So thank you so much, Ruth, and fingers crossed we reach 100,000. Please, if you're listening, sign it, share it, tell everyone about it. My kids' reception teacher messaged me saying signed, which I just thought was brilliant. So thank you, Ruth, for giving us this opportunity to also have a voice for our children.
Thank you. And if anybody wants to learn about play, you know where to come.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I think
I would happily have a meeting with anybody about this, because it's for our children. But thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Ruth. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Neurodivergent Kids. Please do share it with someone else who you think might need to hear it too. To find out more about Ruth's petition and her brilliant work, you'll find everything in the show notes. Don't forget to follow the podcast so you never miss an episode, and if you're enjoying the series, a quick rating or review helps us reach even more parents, carers and educators. Thanks again for being part of this growing community. Catch you next time on Let's Talk Neurodivergent Kids.